My phone rang as I was finishing my breakfast. My grandson's name popped up on the screen and I felt my heart quicken. Austin called rarely. Usually when his mother, my daughter Peyton, had something she wanted to tell me but didn't want to talk to me directly. Grandpa Terrence? Austin's voice sounded uncertain, like he was afraid to bother me. Yes, it's me, I answered, straightening in my chair. It's good to hear from you, Austin. My mom wanted me to tell you that it's my birthday on Sunday. The party starts at 6 in the evening. She said you could come if you wanted. I felt a prick of irritation. If I want to? Of course I want to attend my own grandson's birthday party. But Peyton was acting like she was doing me a favor as usual. Of course I'll be there, I replied, trying to keep my voice upbeat. 16 is only once in a lifetime. Austin was actually turning 15, but I didn't bother correcting myself. Age is just a number, especially when you're over 75. I'm going to be 15, Grandpa, Austin said awkwardly. Yeah, sure, 15. I tried to disguise the gaffe with a chuckle. I was just checking to see if you were listening. After an awkward pause, we exchanged a few more sentences and Austin hung up the phone, apologizing that he had to go. I sat at the kitchen table looking out the window at my neat but overgrown backyard. Ruth had always taken care of the garden, and I hadn't gotten around to tidying it up since she'd left. 4 years have passed, and I still turn around to tell her something interesting or ask her what she thinks of a new kind of coffee. 4 years, and her side of the bed is still empty, and I can't bring myself to sleep in the middle. Ruth was the only one who could smooth over my rough edges. Terrence is just expressing concern in that way, she always explained to Peyton when she took offense to my comments. He wants what's best, he just doesn't always know how to show it. Without her translation, it seemed to my daughter that I was constantly criticizing her. I got up from the table, gathered the dishes, and loaded them into the dishwasher. I needed to decide what to get Austin. Last year, I'd given him the antique coin collection I'd been collecting all my life. Peyton later said that it was too much and that I was trying to buy a kid's affection. I didn't argue, even though I was seething inside at the unfairness of the accusation. I just wanted Austin to have something of me left, something precious to remind him of me when I was gone. Things had once been different. When Peyton was little, she would run to me with open arms when I came home from work. "Daddy's here!" she'd yell, and there was so much genuine joy in those words that it melted my heart. But then she grew up, became a teenager, and something changed. Maybe I was too strict, too insistent in my expectations. "You can do better, Peyton," I said so often. I realize now that what she was hearing was not encouragement, but disappointment. After breakfast, I decided to take a walk to the mall. The doctor advised me to move more and to think better in the fresh air. The day was clear, although cool for early fall. Colusa is a small town, and everything is within walking distance if you're not in a hurry. And what's the hurry at my age? As I strolled between stores, I pondered what a modern 15-year-old might like. Technology? Clothes? I had no idea what was trendy right now. At an electronics store, I stopped in front of a display of game consoles. "Can I help you?" the young salesman asked, obviously thinking I was lost. "I'm looking for a gift for my grandson. He's turning 15, I explained. "What's popular among young people these days?" The guy was unexpectedly patient and told me in detail about the latest innovations. In the end, I chose a new game console, which, according to the salesman, was the dream of every teenager. The price made me wince, but I decided I could afford it. My pension as an electrical engineer wasn't bad, plus my savings from years of work and my spouse's bereavement allowance. "Should I gift wrap it?" the salesman asked. "Yes, please." As I watched him deftly wrap the box with shiny paper, I remembered how Ruth always wrapped gifts. She could turn an ordinary box into a work of art by adding ribbons, bows, little ornaments. "The wrapping is part of the gift, Terry," she used to say. It shows how much love you put in. When I returned home with the package, I set it on the living room table and wondered, maybe a set-top box wasn't the best choice. What if he already has one? Or if his parents are against video games? I had no idea, since we rarely discussed anything beyond formal greetings in our infrequent encounters. I should have called and clarified, but pride wouldn't let me. Peyton would probably say something like, "Why didn't you ask sooner?" Or, "You shouldn't have spent so much money." Instead, I decided to rely on luck. After all, if the gift doesn't fit, it can always be exchanged. The remaining days until Sunday stretched slowly. I tried to occupy myself with the usual things: reading technical magazines, watching old movies, doing crossword puzzles. But my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming meeting. What am I going to tell Peyton? What will I tell Christopher, that pompous turkey who looks at me like I'm a relic of the past? How long would I have to sit there, feeling like an intruder in my own daughter's house? Saturday night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time, examining my face. Deep wrinkles cut across my forehead and cheeks. My gray hair had thinned, but my eyes were still clear, blue, like Ruth's. "You're the most handsome man in the world," she often said, though we both knew it wasn't true. I was never handsome, but I felt special around her. "What would you do, Ruth?" I asked the void. "How would you fix what I had broken?" But of course there was no answer. Only the ticking of the clock on the wall and the sound of cars passing outside the window. Sunday I woke up early, even though the party wasn't scheduled until 6 in the evening. I was on pins and needles all day, double-checking my present several times, changing shirts, practicing a relaxed smile in front of the mirror. An hour before going out, I showered, shaved thoroughly, put on my best suit, the dark blue one Ruth had bought me for our last anniversary together. The suit hung looser on me than before. I'd lost weight since she'd left. I left the house at 5:30, carrying a brightly colored gift bag in front of me. Peyton and Christopher's house was a 20-minute walk away, in a newer neighborhood in Colusa. I could have taken the car, but I decided to walk. It gave me time to gather my thoughts. Along the way, I pondered how Peyton and I ended up in this relationship. When had things gone wrong? Maybe when I insisted she go to engineering college even though she wanted to study art? Or when I expressed doubts about Christopher, calling him not ambitious enough for my daughter? Or was it a slow process of estrangement made up of hundreds of small disappointments and resentments? I always wanted the best for her, but perhaps my idea of best didn't match her own. I thought I was guiding her, but in reality I was trying to remake her in my own image. The streets of Colusa were quiet on this Sunday evening. Yellowed leaves swirled in the air, reminding me of the approaching winter. I walked slowly, trying not to strain my aching knee. It had been acting up more and more often in recent years, especially in wet weather. As I approached my daughter's house, I noticed several parked cars. Apparently, guests were already arriving. I felt a twinge of irritation. Had they really started early? But then I glanced at my watch and realized that I had arrived 15 minutes early. Punctuality had always been a weakness of mine. Ruth often teased me about it. Peyton and Christopher's house was 2 stories with a neatly trimmed lawn and flower beds where Peyton grew the same flowers Ruth had once loved. It was the only thing she had learned from her mother, it seemed to me. Everything else was her own way, ignoring my advice and guidance. I took a deep breath, adjusted my tie, and headed for the front door. Muffled voices and laughter came from behind it. The gift bag tugged awkwardly in my hand, so I grabbed it before I pressed the bell. The bell rang melodiously, and a moment later the door opened. Peyton stood on the doorstep wearing an elegant dress the color of burgundy wine, with her hair swept up on top of her head. She looked so much like Ruth when she was young that it took my breath away. "Daddy," she said, and her smile faded instantly. "You're early." I stepped from foot to foot, feeling awkward like I was a teenager on a first date again. "Just for 15 minutes, I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. You know I'd rather be early than late." Peyton didn't step aside to let me through. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed over her chest, as if she wanted to physically block my way into the house. Behind her back, I could see the festively decorated hallway, colorful balloons, ribbons hanging from the chandelier, a banner that read, "Happy Birthday, Austin." "What's up?" I asked as the pause dragged on. Peyton sighed and lowered her gaze, as if hesitant to say what she was about to say. Then she straightened up and looked me straight in the eye. "Dad, you didn't have to come." I blinked in confusion. "What do you mean you weren't supposed to come?" "Austin called me and invited me to his birthday party." "No," Peyton said firmly. "I asked him to tell me the party was at 6, but I didn't ask him to invite you. It was a misunderstanding." I felt the blood rush to my face. A misunderstanding? My presence at my own grandson's birthday party is a misunderstanding. "Peyton, I don't understand. Why don't you want me here?" There was an explosion of laughter from the house, and I noticed several figures flicker into the living room. Apparently the other guests had already gathered and were having fun. Was I the only one who wasn't expected? Peyton nervously fixed her hair, a gesture she had adopted from her mother. She always did that when Ruth was embarrassed or upset. "Look, only Austin's closest friends and family are here tonight. We invited Christopher's father because, well, he lost his wife recently too, and he needs to get away. I thought you'd understand. You're not really into this kind of thing." I felt my insides tighten with pain and humiliation. Christopher's father, Eugene Reed, was invited because he needed to unwind, and I wasn't. Eugene, whom I'd only seen 5 times over the years, was considered family, and I wasn't. "You invited your father-in-law, but not your own father," I said slowly, as if trying to get the thought into my head. "And you think that's okay?" Peyton threw a quick glance over her shoulder, obviously worried that some of the guests might overhear our conversation. "Dad, please don't make a scene. It's Austin's day, and I don't want anything to ruin it." "Something?" I asked, feeling the anger building up inside me. "Or someone? Am I the one who's ruining the party with my presence?" Peyton pressed her lips together, and for a moment I saw a shadow of regret in her eyes. But she quickly pulled herself together. "You always overdramatize everything. I just wanted today to go smoothly. You don't get along with Christopher, you criticize everything Austin does. You make everyone uncomfortable with your outdated views." Every word hit like a whip. I knew our relationship was strained, but I didn't realize my daughter was so reluctant to see me. "I've never criticized Austin," I countered. "I've always supported him." "You call that supportive?" Peyton grinned bitterly. "You could have gotten an A if you'd tried harder. When I was your age, I already knew what I wanted to be. Those video games are dumbing you down." Is that encouragement? I opened my mouth to object, but found no words. Indeed, I had said something like that, but wasn't it with the best of intentions? Didn't I want my grandson to strive for more? "I just wanted him to realize his potential," I finally said. "His potential or your unfulfilled dreams," Peyton countered. "Just like you wanted me to be an engineer even though I dreamed of art? An old wound." I sighed. "I wanted a stable future for you. Artists rarely earn enough to—" "That's enough," Peyton cut me off. "I don't want to discuss this again. Not today. Just go, please. I'll call you tomorrow. We'll set up a rain check. Maybe the 3 of us can go out for lunch next week." At that moment, there was a loud cry from the house. "Hey, Peyton, where are you? We're ready to get started." I recognized Christopher's voice, and it completely threw me off guard. They were ready to start without me, without even waiting for the official start time of the party. "I'm on my way," Peyton shouted over her shoulder, and then turned to me again with a pleading look. "Dad, please." I stood, clutching the gift bag, which suddenly seemed inappropriately bright and bulky. All these preparations, all the hopes of reconciliation, it was all in vain. My own daughter was so ashamed of me that she didn't want to see her own son at the party. "I understand," I said quietly. You don't have to call tomorrow. I get it. Dad, don't make a tragedy out of it, Peyton frowned. It's just one night. One night where your husband's father is invited, but not your own father. I shook my head. It was clear to me. I turned around to leave, but Peyton suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait, she said, looking at the package in my hands. What is it? I can give Austin a gift from you. I turned around slowly and gave her a long look. Maybe, deep down, she felt guilty about what was going on since she'd offered to give me the gift. But to me, that only made it worse. She wanted my gift, but she didn't want me. No, I answered firmly. If I'm not good enough to be at the party, then my gift isn't good enough. Don't be a baby, Peyton rolled her eyes. Austin will be upset if he doesn't get a gift from you. Are you sure he even knows I'm supposed to be here? I asked. And from the look on her face, I realized I'd hit the mark. That's what I thought. At that moment, the door behind Peyton's back opened wider, and Christopher appeared on the doorstep, tall, cocky, with that perpetually condescending smile of his. Ah, Terence, he said in a tone that mingled surprise with displeasure. We weren't expecting you today. I already explained to Dad that there had been a misunderstanding, Peyton interjected quickly. He was just leaving. Christopher put his hand on his wife's shoulder in a gesture that was meant to be supportive but seemed possessive to me. I'm sorry about this, he said without a shadow of genuine regret. Maybe some other time. At the back of the house, I noticed a group of teenagers, Austin among them. He saw me and waved uncertainly, but made no attempt to approach. Next to him stood Eugene Reed, glass in hand, talking animatedly with a man I didn't know. Suddenly it was all very clear. I was superfluous, unwanted, an outsider in my own daughter's family. Yeah, some other time, I echoed, feeling the words stick in my throat. I looked at Peyton again, trying to find some of the adoration in her eyes that she'd once looked at me with as a little girl. But all I found was impatience and annoyance. You weren't expected here, Daddy, she said quietly but firmly. Please go away. Those words hit me like a physical blow. You weren't expected here. Not, we're sorry, or let's meet tomorrow. Just, you weren't expected here. I looked into her eyes, trying to figure out when my little girl had turned into this cold, alien woman. What had I done that was so unforgivable that she decided to cut me out of her life? Or was it a slow alienation that had been building up over the years, drop by drop, until the cup overflowed? I get it, I said finally, not recognizing my own voice so empty and lifeless. Goodbye, Peyton. I turned and walked away, clutching the now meaningless gift in my hands. Each step was difficult, as if I were walking against a strong wind. I didn't look back, but I heard the door close behind me, quickly, as if with relief. Already on the street, I noticed that Peyton's neighbor, an older woman whose name I couldn't remember, was watching the scene from her window. When our gazes met, she hurriedly retreated to the back of the room and pulled back the curtain. Great. Now I was also the subject of neighborhood gossip. The sun was already setting, coloring the streets of Colusa with golden hues. A dog was barking in the distance, and it sounded as lonely as I was. I walked slowly, shifting my feet with difficulty. My knee ached more than usual, but the physical pain was nothing compared to what was going on inside me. Every beat of my heart was a dull ache, as if it were now beating in a void. You weren't expected here. Those words echoed in my head, over and over like a broken record. I remembered saying something similar to my father years ago when he showed up drunk at my college graduation. You're not welcome here, Dad. Please leave. And he left, stumbling and muttering curses, and I stood there flaming with shame and anger. Had I become a similarly unwelcome guest in my own daughter's life? Had history repeated itself with frightening accuracy? I stopped at the intersection, trying to gather my thoughts. I had to decide where to go. Home? To an empty apartment where no one was waiting? or somewhere else where I could drown my resentment in a glass of whiskey. But alcohol was never my salvation, unlike my father. I'd always prided myself on my sobriety, my control, and I wasn't about to lose it now. I looked at the package in my hand. What should I do with the gift? Return it to the store? Keep it? Throw it in the nearest trash can in a fit of rage? None of the options seemed right. In the end, I decided to go home. There, at least no one would see me falling apart. No one would hear me screaming into my pillow with impotent rage and pain. The drive home seemed endless. Every step was hard, as if I were carrying an invisible weight on my shoulders. Passers-by, rare at this hour, cast curious glances at me. An elderly man in a suit, with a holiday package in his hands, with a look on his face as if the whole world had collapsed. When I finally reached my house, the sun had already set, and dusk had enveloped the streets. I struggled to put the key in the lock. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to make several attempts. Once inside, I carefully placed the gift bag on the table in the hallway, mechanically removed my coat, and hung it on the coat rack. The house greeted me with silence and coolness. I'd forgotten to turn on the heat before I left. I went into the living room and sank heavily into my chair, the same one in which Ruth had once loved to sit with a book in her hands. Only now did I realize how tired I was, not physically, but emotionally. It was as if something inside of me had finally snapped. "Ruth," I whispered into the void, "what am I going to do?" But there was no answer, of course, only the ticking of the old clock on the wall, the one we'd bought together for our wedding anniversary 30 years ago. I sat in the dark, unable to get up and turn on the light. My thoughts raced through my head, jumping from one thing to another. Resentment was replaced by anger, anger by self-pity, self-pity by a strange, devastating calm. "You weren't expected here." Peyton's words kept echoing in my head like a sentence, but gradually something else began to join the pain, something dark and cold that I'd never felt before, a desire for revenge. I sat in the chair for hours, unable to move. Time seemed to stop, and only the clock on the wall counted down the minutes with a monotonous ticking. It was dark outside, and the room was in darkness, but I kept the light on. The darkness suited my condition. "You weren't expected here." Those words kept echoing in my head, poisoning every thought. It wasn't just rejection. It was a complete rejection of me as part of the family. My own daughter, my own flesh and blood, had decided that I didn't even deserve to be present at my grandson's birthday party. Gradually, the numbness began to be replaced by something else. Anger, hot, throbbing, making the blood flow faster through my veins. Why should I meekly accept these attitudes? Why should I let them wipe their feet on me? Ruth always said I give up too easily when it comes to Peyton, that I let my daughter manipulate me. Maybe she was right. Around midnight, I finally rose from my chair, feeling my legs and back stiffen. I mechanically walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it in one gulp. My thoughts kept revolving around the humiliating scene at Peyton's door. How she had stood there blocking my way. How she had looked with that expression of poorly concealed annoyance. How her husband put his hand on her shoulder, a possessive gesture as if to say, "She's mine, not yours." Christopher, the pompous turkey with his smug smile. He'd always treated me with barely concealed contempt, considering me a relic of the past, old-fashioned and unmodern. "Technology has changed a lot since your time, Terrence," he often said in a condescending tone. As if I hadn't kept up with technology, as if I hadn't spent 40 years as an electrical engineer developing systems that were still in use today. I walked back into the living room and turned on the desk lamp. The light stabbed my eyes and I stood blinking for a few seconds, getting used to the brightness. My gaze fell on the framed picture on the wall. Ruth, Peyton, and I at my daughter's college graduation. All smiles, though I remember how tense the atmosphere was that day. Peyton had just announced that she was moving to live with Christopher, whom she had only been dating for 3 months. Ruth and I thought it was too hasty, but we held back our objections, not wanting to mar her daughter's big day. Perhaps I should have spoken up then. Maybe if I had been more honest from the beginning, things would have turned out differently. But now, it was too late to regret the past. I went into the study and turned on the computer. The old laptop booted up slowly with the distinctive hum that annoyed Ruth when I worked late. It was like having a hive of bees in the house, she joked. As the system booted up, I continued to ponder the situation. Peyton had made it clear that I wasn't part of her family, that I was tolerated out of courtesy, nothing more. Well, if that was the case, what was the point of maintaining the appearance of a relationship? What's the point of sticking to conventions? Why not show her how much it hurts when your perfect world falls apart? Opening my browser, I mindlessly switched between news sites for a few minutes, not reading the headlines. Then it hit me. I could show Peyton the true face of her perfect husband. There was always something about Christopher that made me question his fidelity, that swagger, that ease with which he charmed people. He had never struck me as someone capable of a long, monogamous relationship. I remembered a few years ago when I was installing a new router for them, I was configuring the network settings and happened to see a list of connected devices. Among them were 2 laptops. One obviously belonged to Peyton, the other to Christopher. I had memorized their network names and IP addresses out of habit, a professional trait I had developed over the years of working with networks. But there was more to it than that. One day when I was helping Christopher set up his work email account on his home computer, I noticed that he was using the same password for several services. A typical mistake many users make is combining a child's name, date of birth, and an exclamation point. Austin _13 _13 _0 _8 _2 _1000 _20. Trite and predictable. Of course, now, 5 years later, he could have changed the password. But people rarely change their habits. They might add a number at the end or change one letter, but the basic structure usually stays the same. I opened the page of the email service Christopher used. My fingers froze over the keyboard. What I was about to do was illegal. It was an invasion of privacy, hacking, to use the modern term. I could get in serious trouble. But then I remembered Peyton's face when she said, "You weren't expected here." I remembered Christopher putting his hand on her shoulder, asserting his superiority. I remembered the confused look on Austin's face when he didn't even come up to say hello to his own grandfather. I entered Christopher's email address and the assumed password Austin _15 _0 _8 _2 _1000 _20. Updated to reflect Austin's current age. The system requested identity confirmation via phone. Crap. I couldn't get through 2-factor authentication. But then I remembered that Christopher used the same email for his social networking account. Perhaps the security was less stringent there. I went to the social networking site and entered the same information. To my surprise, the system let me through without further verification. Apparently, Christopher had not set up 2-step authentication for this service. The page loaded and I found myself on my son-in-law's personal profile. The usual posts about work, a few photos from corporate events, shots of Austin at a baseball game. Nothing compromising at first glance. But then I noticed the Messages tab. My heart beat faster when I opened it. The list of contacts was long. Christopher communicated a lot for work. I scrolled down the list, unsure of what I was looking for. A woman's name caught my eye, Haley Ford. It seemed familiar, and after a moment I remembered. Haley worked for Christopher's company. A young, attractive woman I'd seen at one of the rare corporate events I'd been invited to. I opened the correspondence and felt my back grow cold. From the very first messages, it was clear that Christopher and Haley's relationship went far beyond professional. Exchanging photos, intimate innuendos, scheduling meetings at hotels under the pretense of business travel. "I can't wait for Wednesday. 2 hours just for us," Christopher wrote. "I've already booked a room. Same as last time," Haley replied. The correspondence went on for over a year. I scrolled up and down through the messages, unable to believe my eyes. All this time, while Christopher had been playing the perfect husband and father, he'd been secretly seeing another woman. I was flooded with a wave of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I was grimly satisfied that I'd been right in my suspicions about my son-in-law's character. On the other, I felt genuinely sorry for Peyton. Despite our complicated relationship, she didn't deserve such a betrayal. But then I remembered her words, "You weren't expected here." And pity was replaced by determination. Peyton made her choice to choose this liar over me. Let her find out who she really trusted with her life. I took screenshots of the most explicit messages, especially the ones that mentioned specific dates and meeting places. Then, realizing that Christopher might notice that someone had logged into his account, I logged out and cleared my browser history. Now I had to decide how to get this information to Peyton. I couldn't just call her and tell her I'd hacked into her husband's account. It had to look like an accidental leak of information. After some thought, I created a new anonymous email address, uploaded the screenshots there, and wrote a short message. "I think you should know this. Your husband is not who he says he is." My finger hovered over the send button. Was I prepared for the consequences? It could ruin Peyton's marriage, traumatize Austin, turn their lives upside down. But isn't that what I wanted? Didn't I dream of showing my daughter that the man she trusted so much had betrayed her the way she had betrayed me? I pressed the button. The message was gone. There was no going back. After that, I shut down the computer and slowly made my way to the bedroom. Despite the late hour, sleep didn't come. I lay staring at the ceiling, imagining Peyton opening that letter. How her expression would change when she saw the proof of her husband's infidelity. Would she experience a fraction of the humiliation and pain I had experienced standing on her doorstep? Sleep did not come until morning, restless and shallow. I dreamed of Ruth, looking at me with disappointment and shaking her head. "That's not how I raised you, Terry," she was saying. I woke up in a cold sweat with a feeling of heaviness in my chest. The morning was gray and dank with a light drizzle outside my window. I struggled to get out of bed, feeling my joints aching. Age was getting worse every year. Mechanically, I did my morning ritual. I brushed my teeth, shaved, made myself some oatmeal and coffee. Everything seemed unreal, as if I was watching myself from the outside. Part of me already regretted what I had done, but it was too late. I had made my choice. Time dragged agonizingly slow. I tried to distract myself by reading, but I couldn't focus on the text. The words blurred before my eyes, and my thoughts kept returning to what would happen when Peyton read my anonymous letter. Around 11 o'clock, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw my daughter's name. My heart skipped a beat. I knew this was the reason she was calling, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. My hands shook as I put the phone to my ear. "Yes?" I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Dad!" Peyton's voice was distorted beyond recognition, soaked with panic and tears. "Dad, you have to come, now!" "What's wrong?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. It's Christopher. She couldn't finish the sentence, choking back sobs. "Calm down, Peyton," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Take a deep breath and tell me what happened." I could hear the intermittent breathing in the phone. Peyton tried to pull herself together, but she wasn't doing a very good job. I pictured her face. Red eyes, smeared mascara, trembling lips. It was the last time I'd seen her like that when Ruth died. We'd grieved together then, and now I was the cause of her suffering. "Christopher is cheating on me," she finally said. "I got an anonymous email with screenshots of their correspondence. They've been dating for over a year, Dad. Over a year. And I never noticed." I paused, searching for words. I had to act surprised but not overplay it. Are you sure it's true? Maybe someone's trying to break you up? No. Her voice sounded lifeless. I showed him the screenshots. He didn't even try to deny it. He said it was just a fling and that she didn't mean anything to him. Like that was supposed to make me feel better. I pictured this scene. Peyton showing her husband the printouts and him cornered, trying to justify himself with trite phrases from cheap melodramas. It's disgusting. I'm sorry, I said, and it was true. Despite my desire for revenge, I never wanted Peyton to suffer. I wanted her to understand what it was like to be betrayed by the person closest to you, but I didn't realize her pain would echo through me like this. I don't know what to do, Dad. Her voice shook. We had a fight, and he left. He said he was staying at a motel and that I needed to chill out, cool off, like I knew he'd eaten the last piece of pie instead of sleeping with another woman. Where's Austin? I asked, suddenly alarmed. Did he hear everything? A pause, then a quiet sob. Yes, he was home when the letter came. I didn't want to make a scene in front of him, but I couldn't help myself. He locked himself in his room and wouldn't answer. I knocked, but he put on music and ignored me. This is it. The first unintended consequence of my revenge. Austin. I hadn't thought about how it would affect him. A 15-year-old witnessing the collapse of his parents' marriage. A wave of shame washed over me. Peyton, you need to talk to him. Explain the situation. What am I supposed to tell him? There was desperation in her voice. I'm sorry, honey. Your father is a liar and a traitor. How do you explain that to a child? He's not a child anymore, I objected gently. He's old enough to understand that adults make mistakes. The important thing is that he knows that you both love him, no matter what happens between you. I can't think about that right now, Peyton moaned. I don't even know if we're going to stay together. How can I forgive this? How can I trust him again? I closed my eyes. A strange sense of déjà vu came over me. Years ago, I'd asked myself the same questions when I found out my father had cheated on my mother. I was a little older than Austin when I accidentally found the proof. I swore to myself then that I would never betray my family the way he had betrayed ours, and now I've ruined my daughter's family myself. That's for you to decide, I said after a pause. But don't make any hasty decisions, especially on emotion. Are you defending him? Peyton's voice turned accusatory. After everything he'd done? No, I said calmly, even though I was seething inside. I'm just saying you can't make these decisions in a state of passion. You need to think about Austin, about the house, about your future. The future, she grinned bitterly. What future? 15 years of marriage down the drain. All our plans, all our dreams, all of them gone in an instant. I wanted to say that it wasn't in an instant, that Christopher had been betraying her for a year by dating this Haley, that he lied to her every day, looking her in the eye and telling her he loved her, but that would only make her hurt worse. Is there anything I can do to help? I asked instead. Do you want me to come over? Yes, please. There was relief in her voice. I don't want to be alone when Christopher comes back. I'm afraid I'll say too much, or I don't know. Give in to his persuasion and pretend it never happened. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I promised. Thank you, Daddy, she said quietly. I'm sorry about last night. I was wrong. Those words should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt only bitterness. The price of that apology was too high. It's okay, I lied. I'll see you soon. I hung up the phone, and for a few minutes I just sat there, staring into space. What started out as an act of revenge had turned into something much more complicated and confusing. I wanted to teach Peyton a lesson, but I hadn't thought about how it would affect Austin. I didn't foresee being dragged into the consequences of my actions, having to pretend to be a supportive father when in reality I was the culprit of everything that was going on. I stood up and started to get ready. I needed to shower, change my clothes, prepare myself mentally for the upcoming visit. I had to play a role, to pretend to be surprised and outraged, to comfort the daughter I had hurt. Under the hot water, I tried to collect my thoughts. What would I tell Peyton? What would I tell Christopher if he came back while I was in there? Would I be able to look Austin in the eye, knowing I'd hurt him with my actions? As I got dressed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. An old man with tired eyes looked at me with judgment. What would Ruth say when she saw what I had become? She always believed in me, always saw the best in me, even when I doubted myself. Would I be so vindictive if she were alive? I doubt it. She was my moral compass, my conscience. "What have I done, Ruth?" I whispered, looking at our picture on the bedside table. "What have I done?" But the picture was silent, and I had to go to the daughter I had betrayed with my revenge. The drive to Peyton's house seemed endless. I drove slowly, delaying the moment of the meeting. My thoughts were jumbled. Part of me still felt satisfied that the plan had worked, that Peyton had realized her mistake and needed me. But the other part, the deeper, more honest part, was chastising me for stooping to such meanness. When I pulled up to my daughter's house, I noticed that Christopher's car really wasn't in the driveway. At least I wouldn't have to run into him right away. I took a deep breath, trying to set myself up for the upcoming conversation, and got out of the car. Peyton opened the door before I could call out. Her face was exactly as I'd pictured it, swollen from crying, with red blotches on her cheeks. Her hair, usually neatly styled, was a mess, and her eyes had a look of loss and pain in them. "Daddy," she breathed out and threw herself into my arms. I hugged her, feeling her shiver. It was a strange feeling, comforting someone you'd hurt. But in that moment, I really wanted to comfort her, to protect her, like when she'd come to me with a scraped knee or a complaint about her classmates. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, stroking her back. "You'll be fine." We walked into the living room and Peyton sank down on the couch, wrapping her arms around herself like she was cold. I sat down next to her, not knowing what to say. My prepared phrases suddenly seemed fake and out of place. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, just to break the silence. Peyton shook her head. "I haven't been able to eat or drink anything since I got that letter. The thought of food makes me nauseous." I nodded, understanding her condition. When Ruth was diagnosed with cancer, I couldn't eat or sleep for days either. "Tell me what happened," I asked. "From the beginning." Peyton took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. "I was checking the mail this morning. The usual routine, bills, mailings, spam. And then I saw this strange email from an unfamiliar address. At first I wanted to delete it, thinking it was spam, but the subject line was too personal. "Your husband is cheating on you." I opened it and saw screenshots, their correspondence, photos, dates, places they met. It was so detailed there was no doubt. She spoke quietly, monotonously, as if she were recounting the plot of a movie, not the events of her own life. I didn't believe it at first. I thought maybe it was some kind of evil joke or mistake. But then I checked the dates. On March 23rd, Christopher said he was going to a conference in Sacramento. I remember because Austin had an important match that day, and Christopher missed it. And the correspondence clearly states that they were meeting at the Riverview Hotel that day. I even found a receipt for the room charge from his credit card in our joint account. I listened, feeling a heaviness building up inside. I didn't know all these details when I sent the screenshots. I hadn't realized how deep Peyton's investigation would go, how painful it would be for her to learn every new detail. When Christopher came in, I showed him the printouts. He tried to deny it at first, said it was fake, but then he just gave up. He admitted that he'd been seeing her for over a year. Peyton covered her face with her hands and her shoulders shook with sobs. I awkwardly put my hand on her back, not knowing how else to comfort her. "He said he only loved me, that it was a mistake, a weakness, that she meant nothing to him," Peyton continued when she calmed down a little. "As if that should make me feel better. 15 years of marriage, Dad. I devoted my life to him. Gave up my career to raise Austin. Supported his business when everyone around me said it was a hopeless venture. And this is how he thanked me. Every word hit me like a hammer. I remembered how I'd criticized Peyton's choice, how I'd said Christopher wasn't ambitious enough, that she could have found someone better. But she hadn't listened. She believed in him, supported him, loved him, and he had betrayed her trust. "What are you going to do?" I asked cautiously. Peyton shook her head. "I don't know. Part of me wants to kick him out for good, file for divorce, take everything I can get. The other part," she stammered, "the other part reminds me that we have 15 years of history, the house we built together, Austin, who adores his father despite all his flaws. What would happen to him if we divorced? That's it. The most painful question of all. What would happen to Austin? I didn't think of that when I was planning my revenge. I didn't realize how it would affect my grandson, who's innocent." "Is Austin still not coming out of his room?" I asked. "No," Peyton sighed. "I knocked, asking to talk, but he just turned the music up louder. I don't know what he's feeling, what he's thinking. He's always been so closed off, especially lately. Adolescence, you know?" I nodded. I remembered how withdrawn I'd become when I was his age, especially after I found out about my father's infidelity. It had changed me, made me question everything and everyone. I didn't want that for Austin. "You need to talk to him," I said. "Explain the situation as best you can. He needs to know that you both love him, no matter what's going on between you." "I don't know how," Peyton admitted. "What am I supposed to say? How do I explain that his father, that he—" She couldn't finish the sentence, and I understood why. There are no easy words to explain a parent's betrayal to a child. "Just be honest," I advised. "As honest as you can be, given his age. Don't demonize Christopher, but don't whitewash what he did. Austin deserved to know the truth, even if it was softened." Peyton nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She had always tried to shield Austin from life's difficulties, perhaps even too much. Now she would have to find a balance between the truth and protecting her son's feelings. "What about Christopher?" I asked. "Have you talked about what comes next?" "He wants a second chance," Peyton grinned bitterly. "He says it was a mistake, that he's realized it and he'll never do it again. He promises to go to couples therapy, to do whatever it takes to rebuild trust." "And you believe him?" Peyton shrugged. "I don't. Part of me wants to believe that people can change, that 15 years of marriage is worth the struggle. The other part says that trust, once broken, can never be completely rebuilt. There will always be that crack, that doubt. Every time he's late for work or traveling on a business trip, I'll wonder, isn't he with her now?" I was silent. What could I say? I had created this situation myself, ruined their family with my revenge. And now I had to pretend to be a caring father, telling my daughter what to do, when in fact I was the cause of all her troubles. "What do you think?" Peyton asked, looking at me hopefully, like when I was a kid and believed I knew the answers to everything. I sighed. I wanted to tell her the truth, to confess everything, to apologize, to take responsibility for my actions. But I knew that would only make things worse. She'd never forgive me if she knew I'd deliberately destroyed her family out of revenge for last night's humiliation. "I think you're the only one who can decide whether to give him a second chance," I said finally. "You know him better than anyone. You know if he's capable of change, if your marriage is worth fighting for." Peyton nodded, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She was waiting for me to give her concrete advice, a decision that would take the responsibility off her shoulders. And I couldn't give it, had no right to. "I'm so confused, Daddy," she whispered. "I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I don't even know if I still love him after such a betrayal." I hugged her, feeling her shiver in my arms. At that moment I felt a strange mixture of feelings. Satisfaction that my revenge had succeeded, and Peyton was now suffering as I had suffered yesterday, standing on her doorstep, and deep, agonizing regret that I had caused her such pain. But what bothered me most of all was Austin, an innocent teenager caught in the middle of adult problems. What would happen to him if his parents divorced? How would that affect his attitude toward love, trust, family? Wouldn't he become as cynical and suspicious as I had become after his father's betrayal? The thought of Austin made me realize the depth of my mistake. I'd been so focused on Peyton's revenge that I hadn't thought about the consequences for my grandson. I had repeated my father's mistake of putting my own selfish desires ahead of the family's well-being. "It's going to be okay," I repeated, not believing my own words. "We'll get through this together." Peyton nodded, snuggling against my shoulder, the way she used to do when she was a little girl, when she was afraid of a thunderstorm or after a nightmare. I stroked her back, whispering comforting words that seemed empty and false. I was struggling with contradictory feelings inside me, satisfaction at the revenge I had accomplished, and deep, agonizing regret for what I had done. But the strongest of them all was anxiety for Austin, who had unwittingly become a victim of my actions. I didn't know if I could ever forgive myself for what I had done. It had been a week since the day Peyton had called me in a panic, a week that seemed to last forever. I tried to keep my distance, to stay out of their family affairs more than necessary. Peyton called me almost every day, updating me on developments in the situation, asking for advice I couldn't give without giving myself away. Christopher moved into a temporary apartment. According to Peyton, they agreed to take a break for 3 months to think things over. He started seeing a therapist, begged for a second chance, swore he'd cut all ties with Haley. And Peyton. Peyton was in a constant oscillation between the desire to keep the family for Austin and the desire to start life from scratch. As for Austin, he was even more withdrawn. He refused to discuss the situation with his mother and only spoke to his father when necessary. Peyton tried to get him an appointment with a teen counselor, but he refused to go. I sat in my office looking at real estate listings in other cities. After everything that had happened, I couldn't stay in Colusa. Every corner of this town reminded me of Ruth, of the life we had, of the family I had destroyed with my own hands. I needed a fresh start, somewhere where no one knew me, where I could be just a lonely old man, not a father who had betrayed his own daughter. The doorbell rang, taking me by surprise. I wasn't expecting visitors. Peyton always warned me of a visit, and no one else ever came to see me. I rose slowly, feeling my joints ache, and headed for the door. Austin stood on the threshold. He looked gaunt, with shadows under his eyes as if he hadn't slept in several nights. His blonde hair, usually neatly combed, was a mess, and his eyes were a mixture of determination and fear. "Austin?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk, Grandpa," he said, and I could hear the mature tone in his voice. "May I come in?" I stepped back, letting him into the house. My heart was racing. Why did he come? What did he want? Had he figured out my role in all this? Austin walked into the living room and sat down on the couch, putting his backpack next to him. I settled into the chair across from him, trying to keep my hands from shaking. "You want anything? Juice? Water? Cookies?" I offered to fill the awkward pause. "No, thanks." He shook his head. Then he unzipped his backpack and pulled out his laptop. "I came to talk about that anonymous letter my mom got." My breath caught. I tried to keep a nonchalant expression on my face, but I could feel the blood draining from my cheeks. "About the anonymous letter?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "What does that have to do with me?" Austin opened his laptop and searched for a few seconds before turning the screen toward me. "Here, look. It's the metadata from the email my mom got. I traced the IP address it was sent from. It leads to Colusa's internet service provider, and more specifically to you, Grandpa. The letter was sent from your home computer." I stared at the screen, which indeed displayed technical data pointing to my computer. I hadn't foreseen that. Sure, I knew that emails could be traced, but I didn't think a 15-year-old could do it. I'd underestimated Austin. This is some kind of mistake. I tried to deny the obvious, but my voice betrayed me, quivering on the last word. Austin shook his head. Don't lie to me, Grandpa. I already figured it out. You hacked into Dad's social media account, took screenshots of his correspondence with that woman, and sent them anonymously to Mom. I just want to know why. I looked at my grandson and saw in his eyes not accusation, but a sincere desire to understand. He wasn't judging me. He wasn't angry. He just wanted to know the truth. I took a deep breath. There was no point in denying the obvious. Austin was too smart and he had proof. You're right, I finally admitted. I did it. Austin nodded as if he'd expected that answer. But why? He repeated his question. Did you want to destroy our family? No, I shook my head. I never wanted to hurt you or your mom. I hesitated, searching for words. You know what happened on your birthday? When they wouldn't let you at the party? Yeah, I saw it. I wanted to come out to you, but Mom said you'd talk later, that it was adult stuff. I clenched my fists, remembering the humiliation of that day. Your mom told me I wasn't invited, that I wasn't welcome, that they only invited Christopher's dad. My voice shook. Do you know what it's like? Standing on the doorstep of your own daughter's house and hearing that you're not welcome there? To see everyone partying inside, including practically strangers, while you, your own father, are shoved out the door. Austin was silent, listening intently. I was crushed, I continued, and angry, very angry. I wanted your mom to feel some of the pain I felt. I wanted to show her that the man she trusted so much was actually betraying her like she betrayed me. But you knew it would affect me too, didn't you? Austin asked quietly. That question hit me the hardest. I lowered my head, unable to look him in the eye. No, I answered honestly. I hadn't thought about you. I was too consumed with my resentment, my desire for revenge. I didn't realize how it would affect you, and now I regret it more than anything. Austin was silent for a while, pondering my words. Then he closed the notebook and put it aside. You know, I always felt like there was something wrong with Dad, he said suddenly. He was often late at work, traveling on weekends. Mom always believed his explanations, and I just knew he was lying. I couldn't explain how. I just felt it. I looked at my grandson in surprise. He was much more observant than I thought. You never told your mother about this? No, Austin shook his head. I didn't want to upset her. And then I had no proof, only suspicions. And now, he shrugged. It doesn't matter now. Are you mad at me? I asked, preparing myself for the worst. Austin thought for a moment before answering. I don't know, he finally admitted. Part of me understands why you did it. I saw the way Mom treated you, the way she and Dad were always talking about you behind your back. But the other part, he stammered. The other part can't help but think about the fact that you destroyed our family. Things are different now. Dad lives apart. Mom cries every night thinking I can't hear. Nothing will ever be the same again. The weight of guilt came over me with a new intensity. I hadn't just gotten revenge on Peyton. I'd changed Austin's life, possibly forever. I'm sorry, I said, and it was the truth. If I could go back, I'd do things differently. But you can't, Austin stated with a wise adult wisdom beyond his years. None of us can. We sat in silence, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. It was beginning to get dark outside the window, long shadows creeping across the living room floor. What are you going to do now? I asked at last. Are you going to tell your mother what you found out? Austin shook his head. No, it would kill her. She's already on edge. If she finds out you're behind all this, I don't think she'll ever be able to forgive you. What about you? I asked quietly. Will you be able to forgive me? Austin stared at me for a long moment as if he was seeing me for the first time. There was no judgment or forgiveness in his gaze, just tiredness and sadness. I don't know, Grandpa. I really don't. I need some time. I nodded, realizing I couldn't ask for more. I'm going to leave Calusa, I said. Sell the house and move somewhere where no one knows me. Start over, as much as I can at my age. Because of what happened. In part. But that's not the only reason. This house, there are too many memories in it. Your grandmother, your mom when she was little. Sometimes I think I hear their voices in empty rooms. It's, hard. Austin nodded understandingly. Where are you going to go? I haven't decided yet. Maybe Oregon. I've always wanted to live closer to the ocean. Ruth loved the ocean. I'm going to miss you, Austin said suddenly, and there was genuine sadness in his voice. Those simple words touched me to the core. Despite everything I had done, despite the pain I had caused, my grandson still cared for me. I'll miss you too, I said, barely holding back tears. But we will be able to communicate. Letters, calls, internet. If you want to, of course. I will, Austin nodded. No matter what, you're still my grandfather. Those words were the most forgiveness I could hope for. It's time for you to go home, I said, glancing at the clock. Your mom will be worried. Yeah, I guess so. Austin started packing his things into his backpack. I told her I was going to a friend's house to do a science project. She's not really following my movements right now, too busy with her own problems. I walked him to the door. On the threshold, Austin suddenly turned around and gave me a hug. It was a brief, awkward teenage hug, but it meant more to me than all the words in the world. Take care of yourself, Grandpa, he said. Let me know when you decide where you're moving to. I'd like to visit you in the summer, if that's all right with you. Sure, I nodded. I'd be glad to. I stood on the doorstep watching Austin walk away down the path, slouching under the weight of his backpack, and it seemed the world. 15 was too young an age to carry such a load on his shoulders. I hoped he could handle it, that these events would not break him, but make him stronger. Back in the house, I sat down at the computer and opened the real estate listings. Now, after talking to Austin, the decision to leave was final. I needed a fresh start, to leave behind all this weight of guilt and regret. I picked out a few options in small coastal Oregon towns and sent inquiries to realtors. Then I made a list of things to do before I left. Appraise the house, contact a lawyer for paperwork, decide what to do with furniture and personal belongings. A lot of things would have to be left behind. Old photo albums, books that Ruth and I had collected over the years, souvenirs from our travels, all of it was too physically and emotionally taxing to take with us. Perhaps I would suggest to Peyton that she take what was dear to her, though I doubted she would agree after all that had happened, not even knowing my role in the breakup of her family. That evening, lying in bed, I thought about the conversation I'd had with Austin, about his maturity, his ability to understand my motives, even if he couldn't completely forgive my actions, about his offer to come visit me over the summer. The thought warmed my heart, gave me hope that all was not lost, that maybe I would have a normal relationship with my grandson. Peyton was more complicated. I knew she would never know about my role in what had happened. Austin had promised to keep it a secret, and I trusted him. But even without that knowledge, our relationship was hopelessly damaged. Too many resentments had accumulated over the years, too many unspoken grievances and unresolved conflicts. Maybe that was my biggest mistake. Not that I avenged a particular grudge, but that I let those grudges build up over the years without really trying to resolve them. I had always thought that Peyton should respect me simply because I was her father, without thinking about the fact that respect had to be earned. As I fell asleep, I thought about the new life that awaited me, about the little house by the ocean, the walks along the shore, the peace and quiet. I knew it would be a lonely life, but maybe that's exactly what I needed. Time alone to reflect on the years I've lived, to make peace with my mistakes, and maybe find some semblance of peace. I woke up this morning with a clear head and a firm decision. The first thing I did was call the realtor and set up an appointment for an appraisal of the house. Then I made a list of things I would take with me: some clothes, a few books, the picture of Ruth that had always been on my bedside table, and an old watch I had inherited from my grandfather. Everything else could either be sold or given away. Peyton called around noon. Her voice sounded tired but calmer than the previous days. "Daddy, have you seen Austin? He said he was going to a friend's house, but he claims they didn't make a deal." "He came by my place yesterday," I answered, deciding not to hide it at least. "We talked, and he went home. Didn't he come back?" "He did," Peyton sighed. "But he wouldn't tell me where he'd been. He's barely spoken to me at all these days." "Give him time," I advised. "It's not easy for him right now." "It's not easy for anyone," Peyton grinned bitterly. "Christopher wants to come home. He says we should try to make things work for Austin. What about you? What do you want?" Peyton was silent for a long time before answering. "I don't know, Dad. I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to try for Austin, for everything we had. The other part of me just can't imagine trusting him again after all this." I wanted to advise her to listen to the second part, to tell her that a man who betrayed once would do it again, but I didn't have the right, not after what he'd done himself. "You need to make a decision you can live with," I said instead. "Don't think about what Christopher wants or even Austin. Think about what you want." "Thank you, Dad," Peyton said quietly. "I have to go now. I'll call you later." After talking to my daughter, I walked out to the backyard. The garden that had once been Ruth's pride was a mess. Weeds sprouted between the flowers. Bushes were overgrown and needed pruning. I'd never found the energy to take care of it after she died. Now, looking at this neglected garden, I thought about my life, about the decisions that had brought me here, about the people I'd lost, some to fate, others to my own actions, about what lay ahead of me. I didn't know if I could ever fully forgive myself for what I had done. I didn't know if Austin would forgive me when he grew up and realized the depth of my betrayal. I didn't know if Peyton would be able to rebuild her family or if she would have to start over like me. But I did know one thing. Sometimes you have to accept being alone if the alternative is a toxic, destructive relationship. Sometimes you have to let go of the past to have a chance at a future. And sometimes it's only when you're at rock bottom that you find the strength to push back and start the journey upward. With these thoughts in mind, I returned to the house and began packing for the new life that awaited me outside of Calusa, outside of everything that was familiar and dear to me. A life that would probably be lonely, but at least it would be honest.